Good evening, folks. This is Andy Pedraza with Special Effects Academy. We're on the start of the week session in the Forex room for June 14th of 2020. We will be going through our standard agenda, look at the prior week's results, our currency strength meter for the last week and the last month, the calendar of announcements scheduled for the week, a look at the major pairs on the daily charts, any setups we see in progress, and a few words in conclusion. Start term ledger on the screen, a pretty flat week. We opened one trade. It is currently at profit, but it hasn't been closed, so that has not been recorded. So we're essentially where we were last week, minus a little bit of swap cost along the way. So we're within a few tenths of a percent of where we were. Long-term account, we're up about 5% for the week. It was definitely a decent enough week. It started out pretty strong and fizzled out towards the end of the week. We saw some heavy retracements happening Thursday into Friday to close the market, but we did trade quite a lot, actually. We opened multiple trades this week, about 15, 20 of them. We had some pretty good winners along the way. We also had a few losers, so the week could have been better. But as I said, sorry, it did turn around somewhere around Thursday, Friday, but we still managed to make out about 5%, which for 1 week's worth of trading is actually quite good. And on the short-term account, pretty much the same thing happened. Fraction towards the beginning of the week, and then we had some turnarounds, and we ended up by about 1 point something percent. So we're up for the week, but not as good a week as we had last week. But again, any positive week is always welcome. Notes and opportunities for improvement. As I mentioned earlier, the week did start very directional and then pivoted towards the end. So ultimately, the week was probably flatter than otherwise, but we did get some good traction in the middle of the week. Some nice gains on the intermediate, as we just saw, and smaller gains on the other accounts. Long-term, of course, is on the open trade, but that one is already protected via the trailing stop. Economies around the globe continue reopening cautiously. There is rioting and protests still happening in the U.S. on racial tensions, and that's happening pretty much in all the larger cities, even some of the larger towns. Oil continues to recover. Silver continues at multi-year highs. It's going to be a busy week on announcements. We've got interest rate decisions and labor reports coming out of multiple places. You'll see the calendar shortly. And of course, our live event will still waiting for to finalize a date, but it is looking very likely to be in September. Relative strength meter for the last 30 days and the last 7. We've got, let's see what we have here. On the 30-day, volatility is down to less than 9%. Silver continued to make strong gains throughout the month. Gold actually gave back somewhat. The Australian and the Kiwi were the big winners in the currencies. The losers being the yen and the dollar. So yen and dollar were pretty much the bigger losers. And we had the Canadian, the Swiss, the euro, pretty much staying middle of the pack. For the week that just ended, the big loser was the Australian. Big winner was gold. Currencies, it was the yen and the dollar, and the Swiss were the bigger gainers, with the CAD, the pound, and the Kiwi, as well as the Aussie being on the losing side. Silver didn't do too well for the week, but again, it's coming off strong gains from the monthly, so a little bit of a retracement every now and then is to be expected. And here's your calendar for the week. As you can see, a very, very busy calendar. We've got the Bank of Japan's, actually, we've got the Reserve Bank of Australia meeting minutes on Monday evening, but I'm not going to be trading that live, so I didn't add it. Later that evening, the Bank of Japan's interest rate decision, we will be trading that. Then later on, towards Tuesday morning, we're going to have the labor report out of the UK, the ILO unemployment. We will be having on Wednesday the labor report out of Australia. On Thursday, we have the Swiss National Bank's interest rate decision early morning. And also early morning, the Bank of England's interest rate decision. So we've got a double whammy that Thursday with very early reports coming out of both of these European countries. So we'll be trading 5 of those live, or at least that's the plan right now. And with that, we move into the major pairs. We can see that the euro dollar continues heading towards the top. It did retrace, as mentioned. A lot of these retraces you're going to see happening towards the second half of the week, Thursday into Friday. So we did have the euro dollar lose some ground, broke the trend line towards the downside, but is still extremely high, all things considered. And there looks to be continued dollar weakness in the card. So this may break the top of the chart and keep going. We'll obviously be taking a look at that and trading accordingly. Pound dollar, same thing. It retraced Thursday into Friday, going all the way down to the top of those trend lines and the next level of support. The pound is also having a few issues between impact of coronavirus as well as deadlines expiring for Brexit, actually trade treaties related to the Brexit pullout with the European Union. They're weighing heavy on the pound right now. So it did falter somewhat towards the end of the week, but still, again, dollar weakness is my expectation. So this one may go back to traveling upward. USD JPY had a pretty good run, broke that trend line finally. If you recall, the yen had been having issues the last couple of weeks and didn't seem to be able to gain any traction. That changed really with a vengeance, and we had a mostly bearish week where the yen went all the way to the underlying level of support. It did retrace on Friday, and we took profit on 2 of the accounts as the yen pulled back. We're still in this trade on the long-term account, and we are carrying profit. USD CAD had a bit of a tough week. This is one of the few pairs that didn't go into dollar weakness from the beginning of the week, actually went in the opposite direction. So the Canadian dollar also facing a few issues there. It retreated all the way back to the next level of resistance, but again, could have gone much further, didn't. So I still think there's a lot of bearishness out of this chart, which we can play. Again, I want to see it start happening. We don't try to predict the market. We try to ride these movements no matter which way they go. USD Swiss, same, did a nice bit of a trip towards the bottommost, the outermost trend line. It's coming all the way from the bottom there. And then Thursday into Friday, it retreated 2 levels of resistance. So again, a little bit of a turnaround with the dollar on economic news, this, that, and the other, but I do not expect, from a fundamental perspective, I don't expect this to last. So I'll still be looking out for dollar weakness, and I'll be waiting for the charts to actually start moving before we take any trades in either direction. Aussie dollar, and you'll see the theme here just continues. So dollar weakness until Thursday into Friday, where it started doing a bit of a retrace, and we're waiting to see if this is a deeper movement or it does continue its way towards the top. Same thing with the Kiwi dollar. They could be carbon copies between the Aussie dollar and Kiwi dollar. So same comment here. Aussie Canadian is still, sorry, is still hanging out very near the top of the chart, has been unable to break, unable to even approach that level of resistance for more than a week now at the 94.50. But then again, it has not been going in the opposite direction either. So it's just been hanging out very near the top, waiting to see if the Aussie does have the strength to continue, or, and this is quite likely, and we'll be on the lookout for that, we're going to have a retrace back to underlying levels of support, going back to previous price range. So either way, we'll be out on the lookout for that. Euro Swiss, nice, very nice recovery, and we played this one. We made quite a bit on this trade. It did head all the way down to the previous highs of the sideways channel where it lingered for so long, went all the way down, touched that, then bounced off of it on Friday and ended up the week with a very steep retrace. That took us out of the open trades at profit, but took us out nonetheless. Could have been more. We could have made more on these trades, but again, there's no way of predicting which way they're going to go. It could very well have continued going down. So my approach is that you can't time the bottoms or lows. You don't know where a bottom or a high is going to be until after the fact. By then, it's too late. When you're looking at the chart, it looks very simple. Well, you could have gotten out here. Yeah, you could have, but you didn't because there was no way of knowing that was where it was going to turn around. So we're never going to take all of the profit. We're going to try to take the middle of each movement. And that is what makes profit over time, and actually quite a nice amount of profit. So just a brief explanation for anyone not familiar with how we do things. Well, that is how we do them. Euro pound continues very sideways, bouncing between a very close levels of support resistance. So we're still waiting for that breakout in either direction. Euro JPY, much like the Euro Swiss, did a very, very strong retrace. Not completely unexpected. I've been saying for a while that the yen was getting weak for no good reason at all. We saw Friday high volatility, went all the way back up to the 122 level before coming back down to 120, and then ended up somewhere in the middle around the 121, 120.75. And that's where it ended the week. So we're still on this one in particular. We're going to be looking at seeing whether it does break support and continues heading down, or if it starts turning around. It's still very much up for grabs. Euro Canadian, very, very sideways, mostly heading towards the top of the sideways range this last week until it bounced back down on Friday. So again, we're waiting for a breakout in either direction. Pound JPY, and we took a trade on the pound JPY, quite a nice trade actually. We grabbed most of that movement. Took us out on Friday when it did its retrace, but took us out. I think this was the highest profit maker out of the week. So we made quite a lot on the pound JPY. And again, waiting to see which way the week kicks off to see if we're going to have a continuation or a retreat. Aussie JPY, same thing. The yen continues to regain some strength. Did quite a bit of damage to the Aussie for the most of the week, really. And on Friday, it got very bouncy and started bouncing between support resistance. Actually, quite wide bounces than 100 pips there. All of that happening on Friday. Has not broken the trend line. So if I do see a trend line break, this is going to be one of my preferred trades. Euro New Zealand broke the trend line towards the top, but ended the week retracing back to that trend line. So again, we'll have to wait to see if this was a test of the trend line. It's going to be heading back up towards the top of the Ichimoku, bottom of the Ichimoku cloud. I'm sorry, it could go to the top too, I guess. So I'm waiting to see a confirmation of the trend break and trend bounce, and we'll likely be trading it in either direction depending what it does. Pound Canadian still following that trend line on its way up. We did get triggered into a short. It is the one remaining trade open on the intermediate term account, and it is carrying a small amount of profit as I write this. So we'll have to see if it does continue and break that trend line, making it one of the better trades, especially since we're already in it. And pound Swiss has been going both up and down, making a bit of a V-shape, reverse V there, or upside down V if you prefer. It is sitting at support. So we did trade this one last week. I forgot if we got out with a bit of profit or at a bit of a loss. It wasn't a big either way. I would be waiting to see if it does continue heading down, and we'll see what we can do with this one. For now, I'm just going to be an observer. That is the end of our charts. Setups we see in progress has really not changed. The UK continues plagued by both coronavirus and Brexit. The US has, everybody has coronavirus, not going to read it out again, but the economy plus rioting in the streets, the dollar is in a pretty precarious position right now between expected stimulus, the economy tanking, and unrest in the streets. So I don't see an upside for the dollar right now. Australia, Japan, both really the coronavirus is the bigger deal. I hear a lot out of Japan that they're selling their debt, so basically they're issuing bonds, trying to get people to buy their bonds, and of course these are very um, I guess, strongly held by banks around the world. It's a hedge, and they try to say that that Japan is over leveraged, is exposed. Yeah, it is. But what country isn't? I mean, here in the U.S., we're printing trillions of dollars, and that is debt sold both internally and externally. So basically, we're all countries that have just started up the printing presses and we never turned them off. So I don't think that saying that Japan is over leveraged or has some issues in the economy is a big thing, because again, you'll be hard pressed to find a country that isn't doing that, unless the country's so much in the hole that nobody wants their debt or their currency. For example, Venezuela. Nobody wants the bolivar right now because there is no expectation that it's going to be worth anything tomorrow, much less in a year, and it's not worth anything today. So unless you're in that situation, every single country is doing the printing debt and selling it to whoever is going to buy it, and basically indebting themselves more and more. At some point, of course, it's going to pop. That's inevitable. But I really object to singling out any single country or economy that you see on the screen right now, and pretending that they're doing something the others aren't doing. So again, that is the setup for the week. So we'll basically be looking at directional trading yet again. While we continue in this situation, we're looking for the breakouts, and we'll trade every breakout we see, every continuation we see, and that has been working wonderfully. Last words here before I sign off for the weekend, and we'll be back tomorrow for our regular trading. But I want to always point out something that struck me, and this is action takers win. And even if they don't win, because sometimes we are action takers and we don't win every time, but even if we don't, at least we're alive. No one has ever made money by sitting on the sidelines and watching the trading floor. And I see, or I get contacted by a lot of people every week. They're reaching out to me with questions, how would you do this? Could I trade that? Could I do this? And I answer them because you know what? Back when I was starting out, a lot of people answered my questions. So I really try to be humble, and anybody that comes to me, unless they're looking for an argument, is going to get as good an answer as I can provide. But I've seen a lot of them that just never do anything. You tell them, well, I would do this. Okay, they don't do that. They don't do the opposite either. Um, and I think at some point, some of them are a little bit offended that I'm still around, that I still do this every week. I think they prefer it if I had a bad run and quit, but that's not the way it works. And then I guess they could pat themselves on the back and say, well, I knew it wouldn't work, and that's why I didn't get into it. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint. You have to take action. If you never take action, true, you probably won't lose, but you're never going to change your life or do anything to better yourself. And at the end of the day, you're going to retire when you're in your 60s or whatever, get a gold watch. I don't think they're giving those out anymore. And then by then it's too late. There does come a point where even if you do start trading or trying to do something, you're not going to have the money to do it. And more importantly, you're not going to have the time. So think about that a lot. I know most of the people listening to me are action takers, but on the off chance that there's some that aren't, maybe this will wake you up. So that's it. That's the end of my presentation for this start of the week. Do I have any comments or questions from anyone before we sign off? Okay, folks, then thank you very much, and we will be back tomorrow in our regular schedule. Have a rest of a great weekend. Bye-bye.